بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لك لا ند لك، من عالم الذر الخفي إلى الفلك، من سار فيه أو سلك، من كان من إنس وجن أو ملك، الكل قد شهدوا بأن الحمد لك لا ند لك والشكر لك. زمانك بستان وعهدك أخضر، وذكراك عصفور من القلب ينقر، وكنت فكانت في الحقول سنابل، وكانت عصافير وكان صنوبر، لمست أمانين فصارت جداولا، وأمطرتنا حبا ولا زلت تمطر، تعاودني ذكراك كل عشية، ويورد فكري حين فيك أفكر، وتأبى جراحي أن تضم شفاهها، كأن جرح الحب لا يتخثر، أحبك لا تفسير عندي لصبوتي، أفسر ماذا والهوى لا يفسر، تأخرت يا أعلى الرجال فليلنا طويل، وأضواء القناديل تسهر، صلى عليك الله جل جلاله ما لاح نور في البروق اللمع، ثم أما بعد، فالسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مرحبا بكم في اليوم الثاني من المنتدى التاسع لتطوير القطاع غير الربحي بعنوان الاستثمار الاجتماعي، استكمالا للتجارب العالمية، ومع الرحلة الخامسة بعنوان الاستثمار ذو الأثر من العمل الخيري إلى صناديق الاستثمار. فليتفضل سعادة الدكتور عمار عطار، أستاذ مساعد لطب المجتمع بجامعة أم القرى، في عام 2011 حصل على درجة الماجستير في إدارة الأعمال، كما حصل على دبلوم عالي في تعليم الموهوبين. يهتم الدكتور عمار في إدارة الابتكار وتصميم الأفكار. ليقدم المتحدث لهذه المحاضرة فاروق خان.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين، نبي الرحمة ونبي الخيرية، نبي العطاء، عليه أفضل الصلاة والتسليم، القائل: أحب الخلق إلى الله أنفعهم للناس. في هذا الصباح الجميل من هذا اليوم المبارك يسعدني أن ندير جلستنا، حيث أن الجميع يتحدث اليوم عن محدودية الموارد في ظل عالم يتطلب العديد من الحلول لمعالجة التحديات البشرية، خصوصاً للمجتمعات التي تواجه الفقر والتحدي في الموارد. كيف يمكن للقطاع الخيري بالشراكة مع صناديق الاستثمار أن تحل هذه التحديات؟ كيف يمكن إيجاد تدفقات رأسمالية استثمارية تحقق المنافع المتبادلة بين القطاع الخيري والصناديق الاستثمارية؟ كيف يمكن هذا التعاون أن يحقق التنمية المستدامة؟ وأيضا كيف يمكن أن نقيس أثر هذا القطاع على المجتمعات؟ سوف يكون محدثنا اليوم سعادة السيد فاروق خان، وهو المدير الأعلى لتطوير الأعمال بمنظمة آكيوم، وهي منظمة عالمية، وكلمة آكيوم بالإنجليزي تعني فطنة. هذه المنظمة هي عبارة عن صندوق استثماري غير هادف للربح، متخصص في هذا المجال لمدة أكثر من 15 عاماً في مجال الاستثمار في المؤسسات الاجتماعية التي تخدم المجتمعات منخفضة الدخل في العديد من البلدان النامية مثل إفريقيا وجنوب آسيا وأمريكا اللاتينية. سيد خان مسؤول عن أنشطة تطوير الأعمال وجمع التبرعات العالمية لهذه المنظمة. عمل سابقا كمدير إقليمي للصندوق والرئيس التنفيذي في باكستان. لديه ما شاء الله أكثر من 25 عام خبرة في الإدارة العليا ومجالس الإدارة، وهو الشريك المؤسس والرئيس التنفيذي لشركة BMA لإدارة الأصول المحدودة، وهي مجموعة مصرفية استثمارية رائدة في باكستان، حصلت على العديد من الجوائز العالمية، منها جائزة يورو ماني لعام 2010 لأفضل بنك في باكستان. نجح السيد خان في إتمام العديد من الصفقات النوعية، منها كان مع شركة GDR بمبلغ 813 مليون دولار، وأيضا تقديم مشورة لشركة الاتصالات للاستحواذ على شركة PTCL بقيمة 2.6 مليار دولار. عمل سابقا مع بنك أمريكان إكسبريس في باكستان وشركة ديلويت في لندن، وشغل منصب رئيس الغرفة التجارية الصناعية للمستثمرين الأجانب. والسيد خان حاصل على درجة البكالوريوس مع مرتبة الشرف في الاقتصاد والمالية من جامعة مانشستر، ومؤهل كمحاسب قانوني من المملكة المتحدة. سوف يحدثنا سعادته عن مفاهيم حول الاستثمار للقطاع الخيري وتأثير العائدات المالية والاستثمارية على المجتمعات، واهتمام المعنيين بالعمل الخيري بالتأثير الاستثماري، وكيف يمكن تغيير مستقبل أكثر من 2 مليار إنسان يعانون من الفقر. وأيضا سوف يعرض علينا دراسة حالة قامت بها منظمة آكيوم في تطبيق مفهوم الاستثمار الخيري بالشراكة مع الاستثمار الرأسمالي. وأيضا سوف يتحدث عن الفجوات التمويلية في القطاع الخيري. إن شاء الله سوف يقدم في حوالي 40 دقيقة. نحن نعتذر على التأخير في البداية، لكن كان الهدف انتظار أكبر عدد ممكن. إن شاء الله سوف يقدم المادة في 40 دقيقة ونترك المجال للأسئلة. قبل أن يبدأ متاح للجميع المشاركة بالأسئلة من خلال المنصة، فالذي لديه أي سؤال يدخل المنصة ويرسل الأسئلة، وإن شاء الله سوف تكون الأسئلة متاحة للجميع. فليتفضل سيد خان مشكورا بالمحاضرة.
Hello. Is this, yes, working? Thank you very much for the introduction, and I'd like to start by just congratulating Dr. Hatan, his colleagues, and KFUPM on holding this excellent conference, and also thank you for inviting me to share our experience of using both philanthropy and investment funds to create change and impact in the world. We had excellent presentations yesterday that have set the context for my presentation. I will do a deep dive into the practice of impact investing. Consider it a 1-hour masterclass. This is a large and complex topic, and I will do my best to give you an overview in 1 hour, and then happy to discuss later in the day as well. So, in this presentation, I will touch upon the recent trends in the sector, how philanthropy and investments can work together to unlock and draw in more mainstream capital towards responsible or ethical investing. I will share some innovative impact investment structures we are developing, and the very important concept of impact measurement. To illustrate, I will go through some specific examples from the off-grid energy sector in which we have been working for almost 12-15 years. So a lot of ground to cover, and which is why I'm using notes to do it as properly and comprehensively as possible. Impact investing is supposedly a new concept, but I would like to share with you to start with an incident from the life of our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. A man from the Ansar came to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and begged from him. The Prophet said, "Have you nothing in your house?" The man said, "Yes, I have a piece of cloth and I have a wooden bowl." So he asked him to bring those to him, and he asked the people around him that, will anyone buy these? So one person offered 1 coin. He asked again 2 or 3 times, will someone buy these? And finally someone said, I will buy them for 2 coins. He sold them for 2 coins and gave the money to the person and said, buy food with 1 coin and give it to your family, and buy an axe with the other coin and bring it to me. The man brought it to him. The Prophet, peace be upon him, fixed the handle on the axe with his own blessed hands and said, go gather firewood and sell it, and do not let me see you for a fortnight. The man went away, gathered firewood and sold it, and when he had earned 10 coins, he came, he brought clothes and food for his family with it. This is just an example, and a very important example in our own heritage, that we must remember that it is important to help people to stand on their own feet so that they can live a respectful and dignified life. Sometimes giving charity can be an easy option. Coming to modern times, since Acumen pioneered the impact investment space almost 2 decades ago, the sector has grown tremendously. The concept of impact has changed the way both how philanthropy is being done, but also how investing is being done. But it remains an evolving and a growing area. Business as usual can no longer be the answer, and neither can philanthropy as usual. What is exciting is that as we encapsulate and look at the whole financial spectrum from pure grants to investments, it gives the flexibility to use the right kind of capital that is appropriate for the problem or the situation. We have always believed that you have to first understand the problem and then figure out what kind of capital is appropriate and most suited to solve the problem. Just to set the context, everything seems to be pointing in the right direction. The sector has shown huge growth, with some of the largest global investors making commitments to the impact investing sector. But I would submit that it is important to note that as we look at these numbers, that a large part of this capital is redefined or reclassified, capital that was already doing good and is not new or incremental capital that is coming into this sector. These numbers are from the most recent 219 GIN report, the Global Impact Investing Network, which is the industry body. The survey shows that 66% of investors seek market return. And this is problematic because if we are to truly create companies and enterprises that can disrupt poverty and serve the poor, then the market returns may not be feasible. Again, we see that a wide range of investments and concepts are broadly clustered under what we call impact investing. All of these are important and show the growing acceptance of impact in the financial markets. However, the real appetite for high-risk investing focused on businesses that will improve the lives of the poor, and we define those as those earning less than $5 a day, remains very small. Most impact investing funds still remain close to the traditional investment side of the scale, and we estimate that almost 95% of impact investors look to invest in later stage companies that have a proven business model, where the risk is relatively lower, and seek market returns. And such capital is important and is required. However, if enough capital is not willing to take the early stage risk and support game-changing companies, then there will never be a strong enough pipeline for the later stage impact capital. As mentioned above, the approach that Acumen pioneered in 2001 has changed the way both philanthropy and investing is being done. And this slide shows some of the ways and products in which philanthropists and investors are using impact as a key part of their decision making. As we saw earlier, there is a significant amount of capital going into both philanthropy and impact investing. So is the work of impact investing done? That's the question I think we need to consider. And will more traditional and mainstream capital be able to take the work forward? 2 billion people without access to electricity makes no sense when Thomas Edison created the light bulb over 130 years ago. We have a world with Tesla cars, solar roofs, and artificial intelligence, while farmers still use their hands and wooden tools to plow their lands. This also makes no sense. So what will it take to solve this problem? We believe that the challenge, objective, and indeed the opportunity for impact investing is how do we change the future of over 2 billion people living in poverty. And this is what Acumen has been focused on since the beginning. We have seen how often government aid and charity created dependencies. At the same time, private business and capital has not been able to provide basic goods and services to the poor. The real opportunity and need for impact investing lies in this area, where aid has fallen short and where markets have failed, where we can use the tools of philanthropy and investing to solve problems of poverty and impact the most vulnerable at scale. And that is important, that how you're able to scale up the impact, because the problems and the issues still remain huge. I just wanted to share these numbers. It is important to note that over the last almost 18-20 years, Acumen has proven that the model works and the leverage is very significant. For every dollar that we have invested in these social enterprises, we have catalyzed almost $6 further that have flown into these companies and these communities. And we have served almost 260 million low-income customers with dignity, not handouts. Pure philanthropic approaches fall short in generating multiplier effects, thereby having a much lesser capital efficiency of impact. In a world where needs are so much greater than resources, we need to focus on making every philanthropic dollar as efficient as any investment dollar. And from our experience, it is possible to use more mainstream and innovative capital while keeping impact firmly in the financial DNA of the funds or of the capital. At Acumen, in recent years, although we started back in 2001 using only philanthropic capital, and that still remains a main focus of our work, but in the last 3-4 years, as the sector has grown, as the opportunities have grown, we have felt it important to use other kinds of capital and bring that into this sector also, so that we can catalyze different kinds of capital, which allows us to extend the reach of our work manyfold, and hence be able to impact a much larger number of people. These are 4 examples where we are using different types of capital beyond the philanthropic capital. I will touch upon these quickly. In education, we are taking our work from South Asia to Africa by developing an innovative recoverable grant structure, which we have co-created with a small group of large foundations. This will also include a performance-based financing element, which is the first time it's being used for an equity fund. Generally, such structures have been used for development impact bonds only. Secondly, we are using a climate-resilient agricultural fund. This is an innovative blended finance structure with a 50% first loss facility to attract capital in a sector which needs much more capital. So this is focused on smallholder farmers in Africa who are the most exposed to climate change. And we are working with Green Climate Fund, who have committed $25 million to give a first loss facility so that more traditional senior equity investors can come into this sector. And this is an investment fund. It has a target IRR or return in the early teens, as well as a target to impact smallholder farmers. We have raised a for-profit fund using a traditional LPGP or a limited partner, general partner structure to demonstrate that traditional capital can now be deployed profitably to provide energy to poor customers who are off-grid. And we have closed it and already started making investments. In Latin America, we are working in a market with very little impact investing to learn what type of business models will work in a post-conflict area. It is important to note, as we look at these investment structures, that none of this would be possible without philanthropic patient capital that enabled us to start the work, create the companies and markets that can now absorb different kinds of capital. And all the structures are using investment as a means to create change and not as an end in itself. To explain, at the heart of our model lies philanthropic or patient capital. So we work in the validate and prepare stage. We did a study back in 2011, and it's on a website called From Blueprint to Scale, and it was very influential in the sector. And we laid open our entire portfolio to a consulting firm that came, reviewed it, and shared the lessons that we have learned, the life cycle of the social enterprises. So we take grant capital, and the main funding gap that we found was in the validate and prepare stage of social enterprises. So we invest in these enterprises and companies that are trying to solve the big problems where markets and government have thus far failed to help the poor. And when we saw this in the presentations yesterday that many of the speakers highlighted. So in our experience, you take philanthropy and invest it in such entrepreneurs for the long term, and you need to be truly patient and be committed for the long term, which traditional capital is not willing to do. So we stay with them and invest in them for anything from 8 to 10, 12 years. And philanthropy is the only kind of capital that has a high enough risk appetite and a low enough return expectation to back early stage innovative companies and ideas that are focused on serving the poor. Traditional capital does not have this kind of appetite. As I mentioned, we invest and accompany these enterprises from 10 to 12 years in the validate and prepare stages. We help these companies get ready for more traditional and commercial investors to go in. So we are investing in areas where other capital doesn't go. And very importantly, we measure not only the financial results, but with equal rigor their social impact. Since Acumen is a not-for-profit, any return that we generate, we reinvest in innovations for the poor. So let me give you an example what this story of patient capital really looks like. 2007 was a major year for technology. These two guys, Sam and Ned, came into our office and said they had a plan to eradicate the use of kerosene, which is in poor communities all over the world, the fuel that is used. It kills people, particularly women, in the kitchen. It is bad for the environment. And they had a plan to eradicate its use, and they had a prototype of a solar lantern that weighed 18 pounds and cost about $36. We thought this was very exciting, and we thought it made a lot of sense, will be an easy sell. But to be honest, the truth is the saying that build and they will come doesn't always work. So in 2007, we invested about $200,000 in the prototype to help it build out and start marketing. And then we invested another $1 million in equity in 2008. Then another $575 in equity in 2010. 2012 was really the turning point. The company was rapidly growing, but it still needed more capital. Traditional investors still had no appetite for this. The idea was too new for them. They didn't really understand the market they were trying to serve, and the solar price was still too high. And D-Light was having to spend a lot of money marketing and trying to convince the customers to buy the product. And these were poor customers, mainly in Africa right now. That's where they started. In the meantime, apart from putting in funds, investing is just the start of the journey. The real work starts after that. You may have a great idea, you may be a great entrepreneur, but then you have to do all the boring stuff. You have to worry about, you have to put in the right supply chain, the accounting systems, the HR management, and all of these are important pillars, and without that, you cannot grow, you cannot scale up. That's true in Silicon Valley, and that's true in impact investing in Africa. So we were also putting in Acumen Fellows as full-time senior level team members to help with things like marketing, distribution, and supply chain. In 2014, the company had brought light to 26 million people, and we had invested about $3.9 million, but the company still needed more capital and support. So in 2015, we put in a different structure of $1 million as a convertible debt. And then we got this result. So the time and effort and risk appetite it takes to create impact at scale can only be done with philanthropic capital. But the results can be game-changing. By the way, Sam and Ned, if I showed you the recent picture, have much less hair and it's gone white, so you need to be ready for that as well. Delight is a company that went through the blueprint, validate, and prepare stages with Acumen, and was one of our earliest investments. This past year, they have now finally raised $41 million in Series E equity. So in Series E, almost 10, 12 years later is now when mainstream traditional investors are coming in to back this company. And they have now brought light to almost 100 million people. But they still need equity, they still need support to continue growing. It is also worth considering, we spoke about philanthropy and investing, that if we had just given $5 million as philanthropy to Delight, and if we assume that a solar home system costs around $30, then we would have helped about 835,000 people, versus Delight having brought light to 97 million. I think that is worth thinking about. Imagine the level of charity you would need to impact so many people. So when you bring the power of philanthropy and the tools of investment and business, you can get sometimes outstanding and game-changing results. Because commercial capital expecting to do good and do well would never have invested in Delight back in 2007. And what is also important is that we also treated the poor as customers, not as recipients of aid. We helped them with dignity, not with handouts. We gave them choice, not charity. And this completely changes the self-worth and psychology of the individual that you're trying to help and the family that you're trying to help. So just continuing with our work in off-grid energy, this shows the impact created by our portfolio overall. Again, you can see the impact efficiency of capital, both in terms of lives impacted. For $1, you're impacting 5 lives, and the follow-on capital raised for every dollar that Acumen has invested. To just illustrate further on a portfolio basis and how you can use both philanthropy and investing, we will see how we're using both philanthropy and investing in the off-grid energy sector. A lot has changed in this sector since we started back in over a decade ago. The amount of capital invested has grown 6-fold in this sector. And almost 800 million people have gained energy access in the last 10 years, and 45% of them have been connected to energy by new startups that didn't exist. Given how the market has grown, we wanted to ask ourselves, are we still needed? Does the sector still relevant for impact investing and for our philanthropic capital? Does the pioneer gap still exist? So our energy team did a study recently that has been published called Accelerating Energy Access, the Role of Patient Capital, and it's on our website. And we found that the answer is a resounding yes. The pioneer gap still exists. Not only did we find that there is a severe gap, in the seed and Series A capital side, but we found that Acumen was still the only investor in 71% of the investments and deals that we looked at. And which is worth thinking, almost 20 years later, there is still very little capital that is coming in at that stage. And we spoke about the sustainable development goals yesterday. And this is, I think, a good example of how small amounts of capital, if it is deployed properly, can help catalyze very large amounts of later stage capital. So if you look at the SDG numbers, we estimated that we need about $11.4 billion per annum of all types of capital, debt and equity to achieve the off-grid segment of SDG 7, which is about bringing energy to everyone. If we break that down into something more manageable, you need about $4 billion of equity for off-grid, but you need only $210 million of early stage equity every year. But on average, in the last 5 years, we have only seen a very small amount, $60.5 million invested into these early stage rounds for energy access companies. This is also a good example of how different types of capital are linked and can help achieve the sustainable development goals. So it's very important. If early stage investments are not being made, you'll never have opportunities for the later stage capital.
Mr. Khan, 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll move quickly. So this is, as I mentioned, that is why we launched Kavi Safi, the off-grid fund, because to try and fill this gap and complement our philanthropy energy investing. This is an investment fund that has an impact target to bring energy to 10 million people over the life of the fund. It's a 10-year fund and generate around 15% net return. So it has both an impact and an investment target. The key to impact investing is, of course, to understand the impact created in addition to the return achieved. And understanding impact is very important. What we have discovered over the last decade is that a lot of time and effort is spent in agreeing the impact matrix, but not, so the effort is on what to measure, but not how to measure it in a cost-effective and repeatable manner. In the last few years, we have pioneered what we call the lean data approach to impact measurement, and this is now widely used in the sector. So there are 3 aspects of impact that we measure. The breadth of impact, how many people and lives are impacted, and that is generally where most impact investors stop. We also, it is important to us to understand how many poor people are we reaching. So that's very important, the poverty profile of our customers. And then thirdly, the depth of impact. Has their lives and how their lives being changed? And that is really the holy grail of impact measurement. And we do this by using technology. My friend Martin spoke about this yesterday as well. We use mobile technology-based surveys, which are standardized surveys that we have designed. And we have made significant progress. I'm going through this quickly and happy to do it in question and answer. We have in the last 4 or 5 years surveyed about 105,000 low-income customers in 28 countries and over 5 continents and completed almost 440 projects. And this is just an example of a company. It's a very sort of small example because of the time constraints, but we are able to get very rich and nuanced information. This is one of the companies, Ethio Chicken, that we invested in Ethiopia and was very successful in its sector in providing high quality protein to poor customers and also to low-income farmers as a way to diversify their income. But we are able to get very rich and important information from our customers, which is not only important for us, but also for the company to see how they're performing, how they can change their business models to do this. And it allows us to deploy our capital more effectively and helps in what sort of business models that we should be backing. To conclude, I'm sharing this with you, this picture. Recently, Forbes celebrated their 100th anniversary, their centenary. And to celebrate this centenary, they recognized the 100 greatest living business minds. And you will see many of the usual suspects, from Warren Buffett to Ray Dalio, etc. As you can see, Acumen founder Jacqueline Novogratz is the only one there without a large dollar number. I think a few years ago, it would have been unthinkable to have someone like Jacqueline Novogratz and Professor Yunus of Grameen Bank included in the Business Hall of Fame. So it is exciting to see the world recognizing and moving towards the power of patient capital to solve the challenges of poverty. It is clear that we have to think differently about what success means. Is it money in the bank? Is it even how much money we give away? I think success is when you give more than you take and how much human energy you can help to release. Thank you very much.
شكرا سيد خان على هذه المحاضرة الماتعة القيمة. حقيقة سعدنا بما عرضت وأيضا الحالات التي قدمت. من خلال المحاضرة طرح السيد خان مفهوم الإمباكت انفستمنت، الاستثمار ذو الأثر، ووضح أنه نوعا ما يعتبر مفهوم حديث، على الرغم أنه أشار أن لدينا في تاريخنا الإسلامي من الشواهد التي تعزز أن هذه المفاهيم كانت موجودة وأيضا كانت مطبقة في المجتمع النبوي. أيضا هناك فجوة موجودة بين قطاع الأعمال والاستثمار وأيضا بين قطاع العطاء الخيري فيما يتعلق بمعالجة تحديات المجتمعات، خصوصا قضايا الفقر. القطاع التجاري يواجه تحدي في أخذ المخاطرة والاستثمار في المشاريع ذات الأثر مع وجود المخاطر العالية، وأيضا القطاع الخيري في توجيه الدعم وضمان الاستمرارية، وأيضا أحيانا يتطلب رأس مال عالي. فالنموذج المقترح هو يوجد حل لهذه الفجوة من خلال التكامل وأيضا ضمان الاستمرارية والأثر. الملاحظ أن خلال العقدين الماضيين هناك اهتمام متزايد للقطاع ووجود توجهات لدى القطاع الاستثماري والقطاع الخيري للتكامل فيما بينهما، وذكر أنهم استطاعوا أن يصلوا إلى معادلة كل دولار يستخدم للعطاء يترك أثر بما يعادل 6 دولار، وكل دولار يؤثر في حياة 5 أشخاص على الأقل. أكد على أهمية عدم النظر فقط إلى العائد بدون الانتباه إلى قضية الأثر وكيفية قياس الأثر. وأستعرض تجربة شركة ديلايت وكيف أن عقلية المستثمر العادية يصعب عليها أخذ المخاطرة والتوازن بين الأثر والربحية وتقدير السعر، وأن نجاح المشاريع الريادية الاجتماعية لا تحتاج فقط إلى استثمار ورأس مال، بل تحتاج إلى توفير العديد من عوامل النجاح، منها تأهيل الكيان والمؤسسين على إدارة المشاريع والإدارة التنفيذية ومفاهيم مثل إدارة سلاسل الإمداد. من الدروس المستفادة أهمية المقارنة أو التكامل بين القطاع العطائي أو الخيري والاستثماري، وعدم التعامل فقط، يعني هي ليس فقط حلول مالية وإنما حتى حلول ذهنية. وعلى سبيل المثال أننا عندما ننظر للمستفيد لا ننظر فقط أنه متلقي ومستقبل للدعم، وإنما أيضا نتعامل معه كعميل وكيف نستطيع أن نصل إليه ونقدم له، وأيضا هو يمكن أن يدفع مقابل الخدمة ولو بتكلفة منخفضة. نختم بجزئية في قضية مهم جدا تحديد المشكلة ابتداءً. فهم الأثر الحقيقي الذي نريد أن نتركه، مهم جدا أن نقيس الأثر من خلال التركيز على الفئة المستهدفة، التوازن بين كم عدد المستفيدين، وأيضا النوع من ناحية درجة الأثر التي نتركها على المستفيدين. شخصيا أحب أن يعني أعلق بتوصية أتمنى أن توجه سواء للإخوة في الجامعة، أيضا في الأكاديمية الفوزان وغيرها من الجهات المانحة، يعني المتابع لما يطرح لتطوير القطاع الغير ربحي يجد أن هناك العديد من المفاهيم الحديثة التي تطرح في هذه الملتقيات، ولذلك أرى الحاجة إلى التأمل ابتداء في جمع هذه المصطلحات والتفكير في تعريبها، ولعلنا نخرج بقاموس معني بالمصطلحات القريبة من واقعنا. أنا شخصيا من أول المحاضرة بحاول أبحث عن تعريب مناسب للمصطلح impact investment، هل هو فرضا الاستثمار ذو الأثر، العائد المؤثر، يعني يبغانا نفكر، وأتوقع أنه هذه فرصة لأنه بعض الأحيان المصطلح يوجهنا في الاتجاه الصحيح أو أحيانا يعطي انطباع غير دقيق. طيب، أنا أبدأ بالسؤال ثم يعني نبدأ بأسئلتكم. سيد خان، من خلال موقعكم شركة آكيوم والمنظمة، ما هي الفرص التدريبية المتاحة والتعليمية سواء كان للحضور أو لطلاب الجامعات أو العاملين في القطاع الخيري في الاستفادة من برامج التدريب؟ هل لديكم زمالة؟ هل لديكم برامج يمكن الاستفادة منها؟
Yes, thank you. And your recommendation, I think, is very important because terminology and is very important so that people can learn from you and you can learn from other people if there is a common terminology and language. And we have two very interesting programs which may be of interest to the students and audience here. One is we have a Acumen Fellows program, where in fact about 4 or 5 people over the years from Saudi Arabia have been selected. It's a global program and are Acumen Fellows. But more importantly, there is such a demand for this training in social sector, in social entrepreneurship, and in leadership. We have put all that training online, and it is probably the largest social sector focused online program in the world. About 1 million people, many from Saudi Arabia, and I've met some people here who've also done the courses, have done these courses online. It's called Plus Acumen, and all the courses are focused on moral leadership and on social entrepreneurship in things like storytelling, in things like human-centered design, in things like adaptive leadership. So I would encourage all of you to have a look, and they're mostly all free, and they are actually, we found them very, very effective.
طيب، السؤال من أحد الحاضرين: كيف استطعتم التغلب على أمية المجتمع الفقير في التعامل مع تقنيات استخدام الطاقة الشمسية من خلال حالة ديلايت؟
So, it's a very good question, and it is the same way that you would convince any customer to start using their product. You cannot go to a poor person who is thinking about how to find his or her next meal and say, use a solar system because it's good for the environment. He or she doesn't care about the environment. He or she is trying to survive and live from day to day. So you have to understand what their needs are and meet those needs. So, you have to market, you have to design the product which is they can afford. So for example, in solar energy, the reason that it became so successful finally was when mobile banking started and smartphones were being used by almost everyone, especially it started in Kenya and Africa. because the way a poor person buys kerosene or wood is by being able to pay for it in small amounts every day. They don't have $30 or $50 or $100 at one point in time to be able to buy the solar home system. But if you can give them financing, they can pay half a dollar, $1 every week, and in 1 year they can pay back for the whole system. So you have to understand what their needs are and meet those needs, and then it will be successful. So Delight had to try out different things. They worked with one of our partners, ideo.org, which uses human-centered design to design their lantern. And that is how, and you know, they're small things. So one thing that happened, it's very interesting how human beings think and work, is that we got a demand, or Delight got a demand back from customers, from these poor people, that, you know, when we go to the town, the electricity is used by a switch on the wall. But he says, you know, we don't have a switch on the wall. So they connected a switch which is on the wall, because human beings are aspirational. You know, everyone, so it's a small thing, but instead of you know, switch on the lantern, they put a wire and put a switch on the wall, so it feels like the same way as when they go to their richer family in the town, how they use electricity. So you have to understand how human beings work, how customers think, and do it accordingly. Sorry, long answer.
أيضا على حالة ديلايت، كيف استطعتم إقناع المتبرعين لدعم مشروع الطاقة الشمسية؟ وهل كانت هل كان المشاركون ينظرون إلى الربحية من المشروع، وكيف كان المردود المالي لهم؟
That's a very good question, and which is why the role of philanthropy is so important in this. So when we made our initial investments, so Acumen is a not-for-profit. We raise grants and donations from our partners, from family offices, from foundations, from individuals. So they have given us a donation. So they have no return expectation. So we don't have to give a return back to them. So that is what gives us the flexibility to be able to take that risk, to be able to invest in a company like Delight in 2007, when this whole concept didn't really exist. If it was investment capital, we would not have been able to do this. So that is why philanthropy and grant capital is so important. But today, we have invested in Delight through our investment fund, where we do have to give a return to our investors and give their capital back. But it's taken 10, 11 years of journey to bring Delight to a stage where you can use investment capital. So, but initially, we did not have to give a return to our donors and our partners.
طيب، لعله السؤال الأخير: كيف نستطيع إقناع المؤسسات المالية والصناديق الاستثمارية في الاستثمار الاجتماعي؟
I think there are 2-3 things. One, we have to understand that there is a spectrum of capital, and you can start with grant or philanthropic capital, but in the end, most of the capital, or the vast majority of the capital, lies on the investment side, where people want and need a return. But in our experience, most investors are willing to allocate a part of their portfolio where they understand that the risk will be high and the return may be very low. But they understand that the impact that they are able to create in the world can be very high. So, you know, as I said, you have to start with the problem at the end. A lot of people talk about that, you know, do good and get a market return. But most people, if you explain to them that if you are to help smallholder farmers, then the return that you might get may be only 1%. And they are happy to do it with a small part of their portfolio. But if you start with that, yes, give us the money and you'll also get a 15% return and you'll save the world, that doesn't work. So financial institutions can back this sector in various ways. As I said, they can use part of their CSR money to help kickstart at the early stage where returns are low or zero. They can create products where they have explained, banks invest in, we talk about market return. What is a market return? You invest in Swiss francs, you get a negative return right now. You invest in bonds, you get maybe a 1% return. You invest in private equity, you hope to get a 20% return. So you have to look at it as a portfolio construction and explain what is the market and problem you're trying to solve and what is the return that you're going to get. And then investors will decide, okay, I want to put 5% of my portfolio in this, or 1% or 20%, that each institution and individual will decide themselves.
Okay, can we close the session with a take-home message in less than 30 seconds?
The take-home message would be that as you look to work in the social sector, think of how many different ways you can achieve your objective. Don't just look at, a lot of people all over the world still want to set up an NGO and go and try and raise charitable money or grant money. See if there are other more efficient, effective ways of doing your work in the social sector. It may not be possible. Traditional charity is still very important, but it's important to think, is there a more effective and efficient way of doing my work, just like you will do in business and investing. Thank you very much.
شكرا للجميع. حقيقة نتطلع إلى تقييم المحاضرة والمحاضر عبر المنصة ذات قيمة بالنسبة لكم جميع المرئيات، نتمنى نستفيد منها. ختاما باسمكم جميعا أشكر محاضرنا السيد فاروق خان على المحاضرة القيمة، ونتمنى إن شاء الله أن نرى الأثر لهذه المحاضرة واقعيا من خلال المؤسسات الخيرية. وجزاكم الله خير، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
شكرا لكم. تيست. شكرا لكم. الرحلة السادسة بعنوان أنظمة الأثر الاجتماعي، الرؤية والطريق. فليتفضل دكتور سمير طباخ الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة تثمير للتمكين المالي، وعضو مجلس إدارة في جسور للشباب، وعضواً في أكثر من منظمة غير ربحية، ليقدم المتحدث لهذه المحاضرة زوران بولجيك.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أسعدني اليوم ويشرفني أن أقدم متحدثنا اليوم اللي هو الأستاذ زوران بولجيك. الأستاذ زوران بولجيك هو الرائد الاجتماعي لمنتدى الاقتصاد العالمي المعروف بشوب عام 2010، وهو المدير والمؤسس لشركة موزياك، وهي مؤسسة متخصصة في ريادة الأعمال في منطقة شرق أوروبا، وتعد المؤسسة رائدة في هذا المجال في كل منطقة البلقان، وهي أيضا رائدة في مجال الأثر الاستثماري، هذا المصطلح الذي تحدث عنه الدكتور عمار الذي يحتاج إلى تعريف بالشكل المناسب. ويعتبر السيد بولجيك خبيراً في مجال الأنظمة ذات الأثر Impact Ecosystem، وهو أيضاً خبير في مجال الثورة الصناعية الرابعة. حصل السيد بولجيك على درجة الماجستير في إدارة الأعمال، وأيضاً حصل على درجة البكالوريوس أيضاً كذلك من جامعة العاصمة بلندن، وبالإضافة إلى ذلك أكمل بنجاح برنامج المنظور الاستراتيجي في المنظمات الغير ربحية من جامعة هارفارد، وكذلك أنهى برنامج فن وعلم تغيير النظم من كلية هارفارد كندي. حاز السيد بولجيك على زمالة كل من بورد سورس، وهي منظمة منظمة غير ربحية أمريكية تأسست عام 1988، وتمثل مهمتها في إلهام ودعم التميز في مجال الإدارة غير الربحية وقيادة مجلس الإدارة والموظفين. وأيضا كذلك هو حاصل على زمالة إنسيد، وهو معهد أوروبي لإدارة الأعمال، وذلك في مجال السياسات العامة والحوكمة وريادة الأعمال. السيد زوران يجيد اللغة الإنجليزية والأسبانية والألمانية، فما شاء الله تبارك الله موسوعة في اللغة. سيحدثنا اليوم عن موضوع جدا مهم حقيقة، وهو موضوع متميز ومختلف عن المواضيع التي طرحت. الموضوع يتحدث عن الإيكو سيستمز أو النظم، وكيف تسخير هذه النظم بتعاون كامل لتخدم المهارات وتخدم المواهب لتساعد على تحقيق الأثر المرجو. وكذلك سيحدثنا عن كيفية وضع معايير وأهداف واضحة لتحقيق الأثر، وكيف يمكن لنا أن نحقق ذلك الأثر. لا أريد أن أطيل عليكم في التقديم أكثر، وليتفضل الأستاذ زوران مشكورا.
Thank you, Dr. Samir, and thank you, everybody in this room, so much for giving me this opportunity to share some of my knowledge from the past. And don't be confused by all these high-level schools. I would like to share a different story of my life as an introduction, because I also want to talk a little bit about that later. When I was 18 years old, a friend of mine, I was finishing my high school in Sarajevo. A friend of mine called Amir from Sarajevo, he called me on the phone. He said, Zoran, there will be no school today. And I asked him, why is that? Of course, as a high school student, you're always happy when there is no school. And I asked, why is that? And he said, there are barricades throughout the city. It is dangerous, and there's going to be no school. And that was 1992. At that time, I was a very good student of electronics, a high school of electronics. And what followed next, in the next 3 years, was a terrible war, which basically took life of 120,000 people in my country and basically destroyed the total social fabric of the country on the long term. I was a high school student one day, and 3 weeks later, I was a soldier, and I was fighting with my brothers and sisters, Muslims and Christians, trying to protect my country from being destroyed. And already a month after that phone call, I was together with my military team. We were going into protecting some of our position in Sarajevo, and we were on a truck, and we stopped on an anti-armor mine under our truck. It basically took lives of several of my friends already at the beginning, and we were all burned down. The only person that came out of there alive and without any serious damage to my body was me, and because we were sitting in this open truck behind, and we were about to cross in front of the enemy positions, and everybody, because we were so young and naive, all of my friends were sitting, and they lay down on the truck behind a big machine gun, and they lied behind, and they were facing the enemy with this side. And for some reason, something whispered into my ear, and I said, I need to turn around. And I turned around to face the enemy. And basically, and later on when we were driving, when the first front light wheel exploded, the flames that killed and destroyed everything basically I was protected by this shield of the anti-aircraft gun. And of course I caught fire and I was injured and everything, and I couldn't hear for a long time. I think really at that time it's only God that whispered to me, or an angel whispered to me to say, because I was the only one that turned the position. So from that moment on, I was wounded 3 times in combat. Thank God I never killed anyone. I really prayed God not to ever be in a situation to kill anyone, and I never killed anyone, which is really important to me. But then later, I was hoping to have a better life in Germany, and I fled the country towards the end of the war and ended up in Germany, and that was the lowest part of my life. I ended up being a dishwasher. All these hopes for the future, all this education, all the efforts, and I ended up being the dishwasher. But still, I really tried hard, and if there was a TV competition of the best dishwasher of Germany in 1995, I probably would have won that competition. I really tried really hard. So that's my story. And then as soon as the war ended in Bosnia, I returned to Bosnia and started studying on the side, and started doing nonprofit. Even though I was always an entrepreneur, I always did nonprofit because I wanted to bring peace back to my country, because God is about love, and I never hated anyone, even despite everything that happened to my country. The reason I'm telling you this story is, and this was actually the story and the pictures I forgot to flip. This is Sarajevo in 1994, when we were starving, had no electricity, no food, and no running water in our apartments, and all the windows were broken from explosions. But the reason I was sharing this story with you is because, I read this very inspiring document, which is called Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030. And in this document, in addition to talking about reducing kingdom's dependency on exports of oil, it also talks about hope. It talks about young men and women developing their talent, developing their capacities, and also having a very active role in building this country's future. So this reminds me of 1992 when I was in Sarajevo. So it is about developing talents, and my story is basically about also how I managed to develop my talent despite all the difficulties I went through in my life, especially at the early age. But I think one vision is one thing. What we need to do is very much see how can we turn that vision into actually concrete things we do every day in our lives. And I'm going to be talking about basically our individual approach as organizations, but also about how we can do much better working collectively. I think my brothers yesterday emphasized some of those things. I'm not going to talk much about, this slide was supposed to be about global warming and the fourth industrial revolution. I added this slide in there because I really think that these are the 2 main challenges standing before us, and the Vision 2030 should not be only about building this kingdom, but we also need to be building this planet as the home to all people on this earth. So I think while doing Vision 2030, we should be, of course, you are from this country, you should be taking care of your people, your neighbors, your family members, but we also have to take care of our planet. And also we have to make sure that the challenges which are brought to us by the fourth industrial revolution and also the opportunities, we can harness in the best way to also make this planet home to everybody and sustainable for the future. So that will be a little bit of an introduction, and I'm not going to go deep into this slide because my colleagues really talked about it yesterday, and we don't have to do that. The next slide is basically, we talked about sectors, and even though I'm sure you're familiar with this, but I would like to give my understanding of the 3 sectors which are very typical when somebody tells you about this, and also the 4th sector, which I think is different than the other 3 sectors, and this is what it looks like. So the government, every government is basically regulating the space, making laws and regulations and rules so that everybody else can function in a fair and prosperous way. Basically, in the interest of government is to build a ground for public good, for the good of all the citizens in this country or any other country. Then we have the private sector. These people are there because they need to make money. And profit is their bottom line. They can be more or less socially responsible, but they're there because they're creating goods and services, and it's really fair. And then demand in return is money, which they value and which we all need in our societies. Then charities. Charities or non-profits, which I'm talking about here. You know that we are about values. We are about hopes. We are about enabling talents and everybody else to become a better person, to become a better version of themselves. We are, more or less religious, but if we are religious, we follow the rules and we are trying to bring these values from our holy books into our daily lives. But we are value-driven. And then we have the fourth sector, which I call it, and there are books written about this, which basically is about value-driven businesses. We are driven by values on the first place, but we are equally driven by sustainability, which in this case means business. We have to be able to make our activities over the long term sustainable, and there are many different ways how we can do that. I think Brother Taib spoke about it yesterday, and we can really do that. But the distinction between the non-profit organizations and social businesses is that we are both value-driven, but social businesses are also self-sustaining themselves through goods and services which they are creating through their activities. So let me go a little bit into, my session is called the Way and the Vision. The vision is the 2030, but in terms of how do I do my daily life? How do I plan my project? How this big vision is there, which is kind of difficult to grasp. How do I do my daily life? And let me bring into my little presentation something which is called the theory of change. And again, my colleagues mentioned it yesterday several times. And I'm going to go a little bit deeper to give you the background of it, which is, the business sector has it easy because the way they measure if the company is performing well is basically by looking at the bottom line, and if this company is honest, you can more or less tell whether this company is doing well, for the stakeholders that they're serving. So for them, measuring results or impact, it's quite easy. You look at the bottom line and you know whether they're doing well. But when we come to the charities, to the non-profit organizations, and also impact enterprises or businesses, it gets much more difficult because we are about values. And it's really difficult to measure if I am more or less happy than my brothers and sisters here. It's really hard to know if I'm, doing more or better in many of these things which are about values. So for us, measuring is not about looking at the bottom line, and it's not only looking at the numbers, it's much more difficult. That's why, when businesses talk to each other, they know about, what is investment, what is a return on investment, what is the supply chain, what is the profit, what is the tax. They all understand that the same way here and I don't know, in Brazil or in Bosnia. It's always the same thing. But when we talk about values and about projects, it can mean different things to different people. That's why we try to invent a tool which will help us communicate between ourselves, but also with our donors. And I'm telling this because I know you are now at the line where you need to develop more projects. And this is a kind of way which is used in most places, like USAID, European Union, many other developing agencies and foundations. They're using this basically tool. And the tool is about, basically, what do I put in? What do I get out in terms of activities and those kind of results, and what comes out? So, and I'm going to tell you more about this because I think it's really, really important when we are developing our individual projects in light of this big vision of 2030. So you look at this slide, and it looks pretty much beautiful and linear. But, humans are not linear. You're not machines. So even though a theory of change is a beautiful tool, it has many deficiencies. And I wanted to discuss a few of them with you here because I think it's important for you to know, because these deficiencies often lead to bad performance of non-profit organizations. If we really want to be a good professional organization, which we need to be, we need to make sure that we understand them and how to actually kind of reach out and aspire for something bigger. So this part of my presentation hasn't been shown anywhere else. This is the first time I'm presenting our way of thinking outside. And basically, when you look at the theory of change, you see there are inputs, activities, outputs, outcome, and impact. And let me, in case you don't understand the concept, because I remember when I started this concept first, how difficult it was me to comprehend. So input is the money and people and the resources you put. That's really simple. Activities is also very simple. This is what you do every day, and you do activities, and that's simple. But output is something which is coming out of your activity, something immediate. Let's say you have a conference and you got together 100 participants, and that's an output. Output, exactly. Outcome is a bit more difficult because it's a kind of many of these outputs coming together. And let me give an analogy. If you are reading a book of physics, for example, and it has 10 chapters, every time you read a chapter, you don't really understand physics. Then you read second chapter, third chapter, fifth chapter, you still don't understand physics fully because you're missing some activities. And if you only read 10 chapters, which you need to do, and then you have an aha moment, and this is your outcome. This is when you actually realize, aha, I had to do activities, read 10 times, but only after I got 10 outputs, I realize, aha, now I know what physics is about, at least from this book. So this is the outcome. And the impact is something even more aspirational. So it's something, I read the book of physics, now I know physics, but impact is maybe, I have to put this knowledge now into real purpose, so maybe I become a doctor of physics while working in the physics department. This is something which is much more long-term. So this is, like I said, not a perfect tool, and that's why, we are struggling to understand what is output, outcome, impact. And for us, because we are nonprofit organizations, because it's so hard to measure what we do, we typically, not in this country, but globally, organizations and good organizations, big organizations, when it comes to impact, they say something very aspirational. There is no indicator of success. We don't really know what it is, impact. And that's why we, to secure ourselves from failure, we as nonprofits often put these assumptions, which is this line and down there, which I call the invisible line of control, which basically means, if I want to, plant nut trees, and somebody was telling me about that the other day, if there is no rain, I cannot really. So the assumption is that there has to be rain for me to succeed, or I have to have an irrigation system for me to succeed. So there are assumptions which are preventing me to meeting this long-term impact. So, but this invisible line of control, and I'm gonna be talking about, what a good organization is and not so good organization is. So if you're a good organization, everything which is now on the left side, from input, activity, and output, and somewhat through outcome, you should be able to achieve. For example, you are running a educational program, and one of your professors gets sick. So you find a new professor, or you change the date. So there's something you should be able to manage. It's really easy to manage. Or, for example, you are coming to a venue and they have no running water for some reason. Okay, you as a good organization will manage that. It's really easy to manage that if you're a professional, a well-organized organization. But it gets a bit more difficult that's why we have this line of control, when you get to, for example, you have a convoy of humanitarian aid, which are delivering to a conflict area, and then you are stopped by rebel soldiers. So, if this is a bit outside of your control, and then still there are ways you can deal with that. You can talk to them, you can pay them, you can go around, you can send another convoy. You can do something to make sure that you achieve this impact, which is sending food to hungry people in this region. So that is a little bit, in between our, do we have control, do we not have control? We can deal with that. But when it comes to impact, to the right side, there's an entire world which is potentially preventing us from doing. Global warming is one example, or suddenly there's an economic crisis. A minister that you are friend with, gets replaced by another person, so it gets more difficult. There are all these things which are unpredicted. So that's why it's really difficult for us to create impact. So if you are a good organization, you will be able to manage most of the things on your left, including some of the outcome. and it will be very, very difficult to do it on the right. Let me give you a brief example which I invented from my country to give you, to emphasize how important this is for any professional organization. And let's say in my country, Bosnia, let's say that, you know, people coming from the master's degree are not in management, for example, are not good. So the market, the companies are struggling with these people. They cannot use them in day-to-day work. So this is a very long-term objective which we would like to fix. So as any organization, you would put some input, which is some money, some resources. Then you will have activities, and let's say we'll send them to Harvard Business School. Let's send them to a 1-month program in Harvard Business School. You know, we'll send them there. We'll select the best professors, you know, and non-professors, whatever, wherever we think. We'll send them there. The output there is like they're gonna attend 150 classes, you know, hours of lecture. They're gonna have 5 areas, and those are all the outputs which we're gonna have. And then they go to Harvard. They come back after a month, and then you want them to write a curriculum, the new curriculum for a master's degree, for example. So this is a little bit outside of your control, because whether they actually come back and sit down and write this, you know, it's difficult because they're going to be busy. You know, it's really hard to have them actually finish this. It's a bit outside of your control. But whether the students coming out of the master's degree 3 years from now are better prepared for the labor market, it's completely outside of your control. So let me tell you what happens in Bosnia. So we want to do this project, and then when we are selecting people to go there, then we have, you know, I'm an organization. Well, there's a brother-in-law. I have to send him there as well. You know, there is a sister-in-law that should go with us because she's really good. So we gather a lot of people which are probably not supposed to be in the group going to Harvard. And then we go to Harvard, and then, of course, because we Bosnians love shopping, and Harvard is so condensed, we miss half of the training because we go shopping, you know, you know, we miss half of the training. And then we realize there that, you know, 2 or 3 people from the group don't speak English, you know. And that's what, you know, how you know, many things are happening in Bosnia like that. So we basically have these people come back to Bosnia to work on this curriculum, but because they're very proud people, very proud professors, you know, they're gonna, even though they miss half of the classes and they didn't get anything because they don't speak English, they're still gonna sit down and write a curriculum which they think is the best. So whether we're gonna have impact, are the students be better off when they come out of school? Probably not. So we did everything perfect, but probably not reaching the impact. So let me tell you what the right way is to do that. And the right way to do that is actually start from the right, from the impact, and say, if we really want to have these students do much better and come out as prepared individuals out of these business schools, let us do this really well. So let's say we're going to commit not to a number of hours, not to a number of people, but we're going to commit and give a promise, not an assumption, a promise. These guys, these students coming out, they're going to be much better students. And then work our way backwards. So when we work our way backwards, then because we committed ourselves not to these outputs and outcomes, which are easy to measure, but we committed ourselves to something 5 years down the road, it becomes much more serious. We have to become much more professional. So this is what it looks like. So we gather only the right people that need to go there. We really make sure that they speak English. We put in provisions that if you miss classes, you'll have to pay a lot of money because this is really expensive to be in Harvard. So we kind of make sure. And then we also give them 2 or 3 extra days after the program so they can do shopping. So, you know, working with the target group. And then when they come back, we really help them. You know, now they're trained, we make sure that they get everything they need to build a curriculum, and then we work with them throughout. So that is what means being professional. That is what it means to have a vision, and that is what it means to measure something which is a real change rather than a number of training, number of professor, number of hours, number of students, and so on. So that will be on an individual level how we need to work and become more professional, and that's the way forward when you are a smaller organization. Let me give you now a bit of an example. It's a different story, which is about bigger organizations or ministries or bigger foundations what we need to do that, to make this vision come true. So when we say about vision on the right, and there are all these talented people in Saudi Arabia, which some of them don't have access. They are poor. They live in remote areas. So how do we make sure that we actually, that gap between, and Brother Farrukh spoke about investment. It's not only about how do we make sure that these people who are poor now but are talented can actually develop their talents, as I did when I was, during the war, and I become what I am today. How do we build this road for them? So this is not only about theory of change. This is not an individual approach. We have to be working much smarter. But let me paint you a picture, and I love this analogy. I use it with my staff. The picture of what it looks like to a poor person, which is outside of major cities and so on. They do have some, if they want to climb to the maximum of their potential of talent, of course, there are already things existing. There's elementary education, there is something we receive from my parents, from time to time there's a program or something, but it looks like pretty much like this picture. So I call it the talent ladder. And it's really difficult for someone who is from a rural area, poor, disempowered, which we talked about yesterday, to actually climb this. So what happens, they never develop their capacities. The role of us from the nonprofit sector, of course we all play a role in this, is to make sure that we actually have enough bars in the ladder so that any person that is willing to try and work hard can climb this ladder. So that's when we move from working individually, like the theory of change, into working collectively. So working collectively means that the talent, which is the #1 topic of the Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, developing talent, that actually we enable young people climb this ladder. So we all individually, all these theory of changes, each single one can be 1 bar in this ladder. We need to put many bars in because people are poor and disadvantaged. And when we say putting many bars in, it means having all of us combining and working together towards a common vision rather than us working individually. I think this is a really 2-second key point I'm trying to make here, is that we have to be very professional individually, but we should also know how to work collectively, not because of ourselves, but because of that young man or woman in rural kingdom, part of the kingdom, which has currently no access, but has talent which can contribute to building this country. So talk to you a little bit about theory, and I'm going to give you also an example from my foundation, from Mosaic Foundation from Bosnia. We basically, in 2013, when I came back from Harvard, we thought, let's not do what other people are doing. Let's take the ladder analogy and let's bring everybody to one place. Let's bring all opportunities produced by anybody in the country to one place. And let's make sure that this ladder is being more and more populated by more and more bars, which are something we get from university, from business, from other sectors. So we basically involve everybody. And I think it's really important to understand here that even though we are nonprofits and traditionally divided into 3 sectors, the future and the challenges which are coming to us from the 4th Industrial Revolution, from the global warming, from what we want to achieve, we can no longer afford to work in isolation. We have to find ways to work collectively. So what we did basically is collectivized all the efforts for young people which we are serving. And that's basically our approach. So in more concrete, and basically what we do, we empower, we identify, empower, and invest in future role models. Telling good stories is really important, but if you can find one person in rural, disempowered young person, and then lead that person through the talent ladder, and then show the world that this is possible, no matter how poor or disadvantaged you are, it's possible because there are many people working together to help you, one person, succeed, then I think this is the way forward. And this is exactly what we did. But I told you, when we were crafting this, we were not thinking about, let's do another project. let's see what everybody else is doing, and then we decided, okay, this is missing, and this is missing, and this is missing from the key areas, and we're going to focus on those areas. So we put all our resources into that. So today, Mosaic Foundation is one of the more recognized foundations in the region, and we basically give around 500 grants to informal groups of young people across the country. So we saw that many are serving non-profit organizations, but nobody's reaching out to the poor and people living in rural areas. So we said, let's offer a grant-making mechanism so that any group of friends can come together and upgrade a playground, build a park, help old people, build a fence around the school. Whatever they think is important, we can fund. And we give 500 of those grants, which we call empowerment grants. And we manage them extremely professionally, and every single grant is online, every cost is online, every receipt is online, every report is online, and every picture is online. So all the community knows what the money is spent for. So whoever wants to know, and we talked about the power of phone yesterday, anybody can log in. It's for free, of course, and check, what is the money being spent. And this is what most people actually in my country do. They like to check on their peers whether they are delivering on what they have promised. So that's one side. But then also, Brother Farrukh spoke today about impact investing. We realized that big money is there, and we talk about bridging gaps. Big money is there, but what about little monies? Those are the most difficult ones to give. So we created a fund and built our own capacities over the last 2.5 years. So now we basically invest in 30 social business startups per year, and we give grants to additional 20 to 30 a year. So you can imagine, by giving ourselves 10 years to do the entire thing, you can imagine how difficult it was to build this mechanism in Bosnia, but we managed to do that. So together with the empowering part, and together with the investment part, and together with our friends from business, and with 42 municipalities from the country which are helping us do this, we give grants, we give investments, we give training, we give consultations, we give a lot of things, which I showed on a previous slide, because we want to make sure that we have enough bars in the ladder for any talented individual to succeed. No matter where, no matter the religion, no matter the age, they should be able to succeed. So so we give grants and we give investments, but then we also realize that there's a power of phone, there's a power of internet, so let's use that to make sure that we have opportunity, that this ladder is available to anybody in any place in the country. So that's why we built we built several IT solutions, but this one in which we invested around €500,000 over the last 1.5 years, is basically a community software which is an ecosystem, mimics the ecosystem. So everything we do in the field with all these people, with all these volunteers, all this money we are working with, it's available online, so anybody from rural parts can go there, sign up. We work with those people through phones, through Skype, through whatever is available. We go there. So we are really focused on not leaving anybody behind. Anybody who wants to succeed, we have opportunities for that person. So I think that's really important to understand. I know you have only 18 minutes more, but just a couple of more slides. I would like to share with you another analogy, and I think in a couple of examples, I'm going to go briefly through them, which is another story which I love, which I really love, is that one day there was a couple walking by the river, and they saw a baby in the water, in the river, and of course they jumped into the water to save the baby. And as they were saving the baby, 2 more babies came down the river, and they called, help, 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 we need to save these babies. And then, somebody was passing by, jumped into the river, so that when they are saving the babies. And as they were saving these babies, 5 more babies came down the river, and they started yelling, help, we need more people to save this. And a guy came by, a young man came by, and said, well, what's happening? Don't you see there are babies drowning, we need you to save them. And he started running up the river. And they asked, why are you crazy? What are you doing up the river with all these babies to be saved? Yeah, I'm going upstream to see, why are these babies falling into the water? So this is an analogy which is important when we talk about individual work with organization, when we talk about collectively, is also to make sure that we are treating also the root, but also the cause of certain problem. And there, I'm going to give you a couple of examples along those lines. And very briefly, there is, a friend of mine is from Jakarta in Indonesia. This is an example of upstream kind of going to see why the babies are falling into the water. They basically, plastic is a beautiful material. It comes from petrol. This is why I chose this example, of course. And he invented an addition which is organic, which helps decompose plastic over 2 to 5 years. So he went upstream and he said, we love plastic, we should continue using plastic. Of course there is recycling, there is reusing, there is reducing, there is everything, but the easiest way to deal with the problem is to make sure that plastic degrades over time. So that is an example of upstream. So if he manages to put this into every plastic producing plant around the world, then we're going to significantly reduce the problem of plastic short term and long term. That's an example of upstream. Let me give you my favorite example from Aravind from India, and this is an amazing eye hospital which is treating cataract of old people. There are several million people with cataract in India, and because they get this illness because of poor nutrition, they get this cataract, and then they're almost blind, and then they cannot no longer work, and then they get really, really poor. So what Aravind did is they invented a model, and this is a very cool model for you to consider as well. This is a cross-subsidizing model. On one side, he is giving, in the center is the hospital. And the hospital is the same for the poor people and the same for the rich people. But on one side, they give this high-level rooms, receptions, and everything. So the rich people pay for the operation, which is the best in the world, by the way, by now. And then they take the extra money from the rich people to pay to actually for the poor people, which are going into the same surgery. And they professionalize the process. Again, professionalize. They made a process there to treat this illness, which is much more efficient than any other hospital in India, and much more efficient than any other hospital in the world. And this is the best eye hospital for cataract in the world. So they are using money from, selling it to the rich people, and within the same room, they're also operating the poor people. That's also a way how to think sustainability long-term in this country. They are working with both ends. If you have time, Google Aravind, amazing story. And that guy, the founder who died a couple of years ago, Dr. V, I really, when I learned about him, I thought he was in paradise today because he did so many amazing things in his life. So that's an example of a downstream. And let me give you an example of which is both upstream and downstream, and also it goes in line with this impact and the vision and saying, no matter what happens, we will get there. So Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, you probably heard about the malaria case. They said, we're gonna do all we can to stop malaria. So they're working with governments on the policy level, they're working upstream, they're working downstream with different partners. They have so many different partners, but they made a promise. They didn't say, if whatever, there's a condition, there's an assumption. They said, we're gonna deal with this. We're gonna fix this. We're gonna find the ways to fix this. And we're gonna partner with so many people, and I have a long list here. We're gonna partner with all these people because we cannot do this alone. It's too complex for anybody, even for Bill Gates, to solve alone. So we need to partner, we need to collaborate, we need to work together. So I think those are the three examples, and let me give you my last slide.
5 minutes, please.
Yeah, exactly. I need exactly 5 minutes. Thank you. And my last slide is okay. I lost myself here. Okay. My last slide. This is something which was published earlier this year by European Venture Philanthropy Association, and goes also a little bit in for you to understand what is investing for impact and what is investing with impact. And I lined up these cases down there under for you to see the difference. So you see on the left, I'm not sure, yeah, I think on the left with the Belinda and Bill Gates Foundation, they will never become sustainable, because we talk about sustainability here. They will never become sustainable because they put the money of their own, and they can always put more money because they have Microsoft and everything, but they are there, they are impact only, and they are grant making only, and they are fully focused on doing this no matter what. And then we have organizations like mine, Mosaic Foundation, which is a social organization which is potentially financially sustainable, because investing in all these businesses will eventually give us some return, and like in the case explained earlier, we will reinvest these returns back into the entire ecosystem to help young people succeed and become role models for the entire society. And then we have Aravind, which is a social organization which is completely self-sustainable, which is making a lot of money, which is the best in the world, but they're treating hundreds and thousands of old people with cataract every year in their hospitals by actually charging a bit more the wealthy people and giving them the wealthy people experience, and then getting in the poor people in on the other side. So this is an organization which is proven and stable and sustainable, and they're actually scaling this model because they have the power of sustainability and the power of professional organization being in the background. And then finally we have businesses which are basically purpose driven, but they are for profit. And Oxium is there because they are a company, and they were a company until the owner said, aha, they were producing plastic before, and the owner said, aha, I no longer want to be part of the problem for the plastic, I want to become part of the solution, and this is a kind of a business which a proven social model. So basically, I'll actually led you through a lot of things today in trying to show or share some of my experience. There are many other methodologies in the back that are linked to what I'm explaining today, but I want to leave you with three key messages today. And one, given the challenges, given the vision, given the demand for sustainability, we can no longer afford to be disorganized. We can no longer afford to work individually in isolation as some kind of projects on the side. We have to start working collectively. We have to move from the ladder with missing bars inside to a ladder which has many bars inside. And we can only give this experience to talent in rural parts of the kingdom, if we work together. So if we really have the good intentions, we also have to put in the right business model to actually make this operational business model to make this happen. So, but it's not about working together only you as non-profit organization. That's my second message. The complexities of tomorrow, the volatilities that we're going to be experiencing the next 10 or more years are requiring for a multi-sectoral approach. They're really calling for that. So we have to find ways, and we talked about it yesterday, to have much more business engaged in this, much more investment engaged in this. Governments need to be partners, not only somebody sitting on the side and say, here's some money and you take care of that. They have to take a stake in this. They have to be much more engaged, because only together, when we all take a share of responsibility, we can deal with these problems that we talked about yesterday and today. And finally, we live in the 20th century, 21st century. We need to use digital solutions to do that, because everybody has a smartphone, like Marty was saying yesterday. Everybody has a smartphone, and that is our way to these poor people in rural areas. That's how we can reach out to them. That's how we can bring them in. That's how they feel that there is an opportunity there. But when we talk about that, again, let's take it as a step-by-step approach, because poor people often think that they have no connections, no knowledge, no experience. Nobody's going to give them any money, so sometimes they don't even look into that. So let's build this entire thing gradually so we can actually build a sustainable future for all. So, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, this was kind of, I have so much more to share, but I just wanted to focus on these two things, which is being professional individually, and also being very strategic about working collectively. Thank you very much.
شكرا للسيد زوران على هذه المحاضرة. تطرق فيها في بداية إلى حديثه عن الرؤية والآمال التي تحملها رؤية 2030، وبعد ذلك مر على أهم القطاعات التي يجب أن تكون موجودة في كل النظام الإيكو سيستم ليتم العمل بشكل كويس ومناسب. وأيضا ذكر أن الأعمال أو لغة أصحاب الأعمال عندهم لغة مشتركة، ونحن أيضا بحاجة إلى أدوات ولغة مشتركة تطرق من خلالها إلى نموذج الإطار المنطقي وكيفية عمله. وذكر أننا دائما نضع افتراضات، فنريد أن ننتقل من الافتراضات ونعود للخلف وللوراء ونضع تعهدات لهذه الافتراضات، فنحولها من عبارة عن افتراضات إلى التزامات لابد أن نحققها ونقيسها بإذن الله عز وجل. ثم ذكر أن جميع هذه القطاعات لابد أن تعمل معا لإزالة العوائق، وذكر مثال السلم ودرجات السلم، وكيف أن كل واحد مننا كل قطاع من القطاعات تساهم في وضع درجة على هذا السلم لإزالة جميع العوائق في سبيل تحصيل الأثر الاجتماعي المرجو. وأخيراً أعطانا بعض الأمثلة الجميلة من أندونيسيا، الأب ستريم والداون ستريم، كيف التدخل يكون من الأعلى والتدخل يكون من أسفل لتغيير التأثير. وذكر 3 نقاط مهمة جداً لابد أن نعمل معاً، وكلمة معاً لا يقصد فيها فقط القطاع الخيري، بينما كل القطاعات الربحية وغير الربحية والحكومية كلها تعمل معاً. ولا بد أن نستخدم التقنية ليس لإزالة الإنسان بل لتسهيل التواصل الإنساني بيننا. لدينا بعض الأسئلة وإن شاء الله لا نطيل عليكم. يعني السؤال الأول، من أكبر تحديات قياس الأثر هو غياب أو صعوبة قياس خط الأساس البيس لاين، وكذلك وجود عوامل أخرى تؤثر على الفئة المستهدفة بجانب تدخلات المنظمات. ما هي الأدوات التي يمكن استخدامها لقياس الأثر في ظل عدم توفر خط أساس أو قياس مبني قبلي، وكيف يمكن تحييد العوامل الخارجية الأخرى؟
Yes, thank you for this excellent summary of my presentation. Measuring is a very important part of what we do, but over measuring is a problem. So you need to measure only that which is key for you to understand whether what you're doing is giving the results which you have intended. In the ideal case, there should be a baseline, but of course sometimes we work in the unknown when there is no baseline. So then we can do the theory of change is a great tool, because then you can design your activities and see what are these outputs, like one chapter of the big book of physics, and then what are the outcomes, and then you understand what are the 10 chapters, you put some indicators and you invent them. You make it logical. You don't do too many because you don't want to overburden yourself with collecting data. It only has to make sense. This is not rocket science, it has to make sense. And eventually, when talking about selecting the indicators, you have to be aware of what you are going to achieve individually as an organization. Let's say you're building 100 homes. Building 100 homes, you can say this is a very big task, because it is. But it's only at the level of output. What it really matters is how you're going to create community among the people living in those homes and how you're going to give them jobs. So if you are only building homes, in my analogy of the ladder, you should work with other organizations immediately to start thinking about, building an educational program for kids, doing a kindergarten, creating job opportunities, having whatever facilities they need in addition, parks, whatever. So, it's not rocket science, it's really common sense. It's only for us to understand that if we all deliver on all individual pieces, and if we work together and measure together, we can do so much more with resources we have available.
سؤال آخر، هل القطاع الرابع قطاع اعتمد من الهيئات الحكومية والرسمية أم أنه قطاع جديد لم يأخذ الشكل القانوني حتى الآن؟
In some countries it is. They don't call it specifically fourth sector. For example, in the UK they have different social purpose organizations or businesses. I think in Germany they have also a similar facility. It doesn't really matter what the law that regulates that is. You can be a fourth sector being a foundation. You can be a fourth sector being an NGO. You can be a fourth sector being a business, like the case of Oxium. But in any case, what it matters is that we put purpose and the holy teachings before making money, but also not forgetting that, you know, to be sustainable and to be systemic, we have to also be aware of the financial side of the equation.
السؤال الأخير: How does your foundation generate income to spend on your initiatives and projects? Yeah, it was in English. Yeah, it was written in English, that's why.
I was listening to that.
Okay.
Can you repeat, please?
I will repeat it again. أيوة. كيف يمكن لمنظمتكم let me speak in English again. How does your foundation generate income to spend on your initiatives and projects?
Yes. Well, we have to our own. It's a big thing. So let me, because I know you are now concerned about your sustainability, and you should start with one thing rather than with 50 things we have. We have over 50 sources of revenue. We have our own small endowment. We have income from our own companies. We are doing fundraising with local municipalities. 42 of them are partners, financial. We are partnering with international foundations, for example, the Bosch Foundation or other foundations. We are partnering with international development organizations like the Swiss and the Swedish. So altogether, there are over 50 or close to 60 sources of funding, which we combine together. So being sustainable is not only about, it's not depending on one source of funding, it's also about diversifying that sources of funding. So if you can immediately have 2, 3, 5, 15, of course it gets much more difficult to manage, but it makes you much more sustainable over the long run.
شكرا للجميع وشكرا للأستاذ زوران. إذا كان لديك كلمة أخيرة ترغب أن تقولها.
Yes, just one last thing which I told you about my personal experience, and you know, when I was crossing in between, which I didn't mention, is that I crossed many borders as a refugee, many borders illegally, and I took risks, personal risks, and also risks for my life to succeed that. But this is where I am today, and my last message to you: Vision 2030 requires you to take risks, requires you to learn, and requires you to experiment, and requires you to collaborate. I think by combining all these things together, we can then have a much more coherent approach to making this beautiful vision become true. Thank you very much.
شكرا لكم جميعا، ونذكركم بالتقييم المحاضرة إن شاء الله عن طريق الرابط. شكرا لكم.
شكرا لكم جميعا، استمتعنا كثيرا. استأذنكم بس أحتاج القهوة. بسم الله. القهوة العربية لا لذة لها حين نؤجل لحظة الاحتساء، فالتسويف هي أكبر وسادة اخترعها التاريخ. الأفكار الرائدة لا قيمة لها عندما تكون بعيدة كل البعد عن التطبيق. الأمل أن تخرج لترى النور من قلب البذرة لتصبح ورقة، فتصبح ثمرة، فيلتقطها من يريد أن يلتقطها. إذن شكرا لكم ويعطيكم العافية، ونشوفكم إن شاء الله بعد الاستراحة بعد 15 دقيقة. شكرا لكم، جزاكم الله خير.